Would you abort your child if it was going to be born with severe disabilities? Why or why not? Yup. I had a child with severe disabilities and watched her suffer for months before she finally died. I would not wish that on any child. Severe. Yes. I watched my nephew suffer for 8 years. He was okay, as in content. For the first few years he loved lights and colors, and because he couldn't walk, he was obsessed with feet. He would roll on the floor, and my dad lowered his fish tank for him. It was his favorite, and we all wore funny socks and slippers, and oh my god, his laughter when my sister would wear these slippers of reindeers with bells on them. It was a musical laugh, very happy. He had a feeding tube, and loved cuddles. Sweet baby, but always a baby. Even at 50 lbs very hard on my sister. We see his dad left as soon as my nephew was diagnosed, 3 months. But as my nephew's illness progressed, so did his pain. By the end, he was in pain 24/7. He was a child, really, a baby. We see even though he was 8, he didn't have an 8-year-old's mental capacity, and all he knew was pain. I couldn't do that to a person if I could prevent it. My sister had no idea he was disabled when she was pregnant, BTW. I don't know what she would have done if she had known, but she didn't. All tests were normal. He died at home. He had seizure after seizure, and eventually either he stopped breathing or his heart stopped. They don't know which happened first. My sister has, obviously, never been the same. Also, my other nephew also had PTSD from seeing his brother so sick. It's so hard on everyone. I could not do it. My wife did. The fetus tested positive for Edwards syndrome. Just given those test results, the chance of a live birth dropped to 5%. Assuming the baby was born, the median life expectancy was measured in days. Likely disabilities include kidney malformations, structural heart defects at birth, intestines protruding outside the body, esophageal atresia, intellectual disability, developmental delays, growth deficiency, feeding difficulties, breathing difficulties, and arthrogryposis. Skimming Wikipedia. Apparently results have got better since we dealt with this, but still nothing like good quality of life. So she had the abortion. It was a relatively easy decision as these things go. That was her first pregnancy. The second one was healthy. Our daughter is in school at the moment. She's tiring and often annoying, but in age appropriate ways. If my wife didn't have the abortion, we probably wouldn't have had her. We might not have been able to. The first pregnancy could have caused health problems, and we might not have wanted to, given the expense and trauma we would have gone through. When abortion bans are in the news, I often think, if that had been the law for us, our daughter wouldn't be alive. Yes, absolutely. I worked in a pediatric ICU for 4 years and medicine has gotten too good at keeping people alive. Kids would sit for months and months connected to CRRT, dialysis, and ECMO, heart/lung machine, literally wasting away before ultimately dying. And when they die they don't resemble anything like a kid. They look like puffy little aliens who sometimes have lost the perfusion to their hands and feet, so now they're dead and black. It's horrific and I can't imagine putting a child through that. I also cannot imagine spending my days sitting in a hospital room watching that happen to my child. My close friend has a severely mentally and physically disabled child. It's thankless, exhausting, doesn't leave the parents any time to just be their own persons, and you don't get to experience all the joys of parenting, like watching your child grow, learn new things, build friendships and relationships, get an education and a job they enjoy. Honestly, it sucks. It sucks for her, her husband, her other kid, and most of all for the disabled kid who is in constant pain and needs 20 medications a day to just survive, and will just be sitting in a care facility for the rest of her life once her parents pass. So yeah, no, nobody wins in this. Absolutely I would abort. I grew up with a sister who was held back at birth. Her highest measurable IQ is 2 years 6 months at feeding herself. She is in her mid/late 60s now. No one in our very large family had a normal childhood. We all had to watch her and take care of her. She's older than me, but I still had to take care of her toilet needs, and I often had to clean up floors, furniture, and laundry, plus her, when I wasn't even a teenager yet. As I was closest in age, it fell to me to be her caregiver and eventually her guardian. A large part of my life has been devoted to her. I knew very early on that I would never want to give birth to a mentally challenged kid. I lived in fear that my own child would be held back and end up oxygen deprived and be like her. I never had a clue what a real childhood should be until I got a lot older. I often think how different the lives of my siblings, parents and myself would be had she been born as a normal person. I could never willingly give birth to a mentally disabled person and mess the lives of my other kids and my spouse up so drastically. Don't get me wrong. I love my sister, but the sacrifices, the workload, and the mental and emotional pain is a steep price for a kid or a parent to pay. Yes, and I did at 18 weeks. Pregnancy had a 1% chance of even making it to the end and the child would have had lifelong health issues. I still stand by my decision. I work in a PPEC, which is like a medical facility that takes care of these exact children. I see some of these kids and I definitely see them growing up and having fulfilling lives despite their impairments. Though the other half of these kids will never speak/walk/do anything without the help of a parent or caregiver. I love these kids, but seeing some kid with no ability to move any part of their body or even look like their heads are about to explode with tears coming from their eyes with no ability to yell help me from this just fucking kills me. Even one of these patients is like 6 feet tall and is a threat to other staff and kids because he's so strong and uncontrollable. It's depressing. I can't subject myself to that. It's selfish to keep them alive when they are never going to get better and just become more of a burden to the parents or anyone else for that matter. We found out the fetus my wife was carrying had cystic fibrosis. We aborted. It was an extremely difficult decision and we were shattered for quite some time. We still feel guilt, but we don't regret the decision. We've since had 2 amazing, healthy children, so I'm sure that rearranges things in our minds a bit. On the flip side, the couple that bought the house we lived in at the time has a son with compare. I check in on them on social from time to time and see pictures of what life would have been like for us and the child in that same house. Seeing their beautiful son makes me feel terrible. Seeing how much his condition dominates their lives and the anxiety they have about it, particularly in the COVID era, makes me feel like we made the humane decision. I hope nobody reading this is ever put in that position. If you have been or are in it now, I'm very sorry. I'm going out on a limb to talk about something incredibly personal here. I was a victim of childhood SAP that resulted in a pregnancy. I grew up in a southern state and was constantly told how horrible abortion was. My child was born with a severe and terminal skin condition that made her suffer beyond imagination. Many children with her level of disease are skinned alive through natural birth. She spent months in isolation at a top hospital. During her life she had to have countless surgeries, including 2 to replace her esophagus with pieces of her colon to keep it open. Her fingers fused together despite the best treatment. She was unable to extend her leg fully due to scars, had to have a support dog to help interrupt the pain every single time she used the bathroom. She couldn't eat solid food or attend school. She never ran or played. The pain from a dog licking a baby's face is enough to prompt them to stand and walk to avoid further pain. Of the children who reach puberty, they can look forward to their many scars becoming cancerous. She died on Mother's Day, May 8, 2011 at the age of 11. Her 22nd birthday would have been this past St. Patrick's Day. I can tell you wholeheartedly there is nothing I regret more than not having that abortion. It will always depend on the disability level, etc. But if you can save a child from suffering, why wouldn't you? Yes, without hesitation. If a pet is constantly in pain, for instance terminal illness, old age, etc., we euthanize them to stop the suffering. Same with humans. If I can prevent someone from having a life full of suffering, I will do so, without hesitation. Yes. If I can reduce anyone's suffering, I will. And even if I let it live, I would not be in a position to take care of someone with severe disabilities anyway. If it was severe, probably. I'm in NICU now with my newborn who has a case of isolated Pierrobin sequence and a cleft palate. Very fixable, and after some plastic surgery to fix his palate in time to grow out of his small jaw and airway, he'll live a completely normal life. That being said, this journey has been incredibly stressful and hard to watch your newborn have to undergo procedures. Only comfort is knowing afterwards he's going to be totally okay. For babies/children that would have to live their entire life this way, I'd prevent it if I could. This is rough. My aunt got German measles when she was pregnant and subsequently gave birth to my cousin, who has congenital rubella syndrome. My cousin is blind, deaf, can't communicate, and doesn't know anyone other than her mother because of smell. The doctor in the 1970s didn't believe in abortion and didn't tell my aunt she had German measles. My aunt has spent the last 50 years looking after my cousin, having her in care homes, and is now stressing over what's going to happen to her when she passes, as my cousin will have no one. So yes, I would abort a child with severe disabilities. I would abort a child without them. My gene pool is terrible, and if I got pregnant miraculously, there's no way I'd be keeping it. I have enough inheritable diseases I could pass on, and the buck stops here. Yes, and I did. The 16 to 18 week ultrasound is when most of these diagnoses are made. My second planned child was diagnosed with fatal severe malformations. Those were the terrifying words used by the doctors. I was 18 weeks pregnant when I had the ultrasound. The results got lost in the mail and I wasn't informed until I was 20 weeks PG. I had exactly 8 days to make the hardest decision of my life. I went to specialists, had further tests looking into genetics. Asked the experts. All said medical termination. It broke my heart for some time. But I could feel the seizures caused by the multiple severe malformations. His head, heart, face, hands, colon, and foot were all deformed. Even with no hope for life, it was a difficult decision to make, and a hard procedure to endure. I looked at it as I was his life support system, and I was the only thing keeping him alive. If I was a life support machine, I had to make the call. And I did. True story of mom who loved her wanted child, and made the decision I believed to be in his best interest. To end his life, that couldn't be and never began. It isn't something I wish on anyone, but I believe it is important to say my life experience. Probably yes. I'd like to give my children the best of life and opportunity, and I'd like starting it by giving them the best genetics I can. If they have no quality of life, yes. I don't want them to suffer due to my selfishness. While live in a shell your whole existence. In a heartbeat, yes. This coming from a parent of special needs kids, and I see their challenges and frustrations every day. I also weep for all the things they are missing out on in their lives. Yes. I don't think most folks fully understand how much fighting the parents will be required to do to obtain the support services they need. Medical all-encompassing, appointments, medication, adaptive equipment, education, person-centered IEP. The endless need to justify the basics to bureaucrats, whose job it is to deny services and cut costs. As soon as the child makes the slightest improvement, see how quickly services that may have been in place vanish, without warning. Private insurance exists to deny coverage. Not to mention, as the child grows, the needs of the child may change, and then you are back to square one of trying to justify everything. Housing. We all know this is a nightmare. Helping the child develop meaningful relationships and interests. If you do not have the financial resources, you are on your own, and you will never get a break. Yes, because someday I will die, and the system to take care of disabled adults is horrible. I would in a heartbeat. My brother is severely mentally and physically disabled. All of my parents' time and attention has gone towards taking care of him. Growing up I kinda did my own thing. Now a few years since I moved out, I'm not necessarily close with any of them. I love them, but felt neglected as a child. Was never fully able to build strong and close relationships with them. I completely understand and don't hold anything against them. I have a few mental health issues I'm dealing with of my own due to my childhood because of it. A severely disabled child can really affect everyone in the family, not just the parents. I'm sorry my parents weren't able to fully live their lives, and I feel sorry I'm not close with them. But after growing up the way I did, I'd never want anyone to feel like this, if I can help it. Let alone be put in my parents' situations because of it. Yes. Didn't sign up for that. Sounds harsh, but I'm not a liar. As much as it pains me to write this, my wife and I had no choice but to do so. She was just on 5 months along, everything was smooth as glass, no problems at all. One afternoon she gets a slight twinge in her lower abdomen and starts losing amnio fluid. We go straight to the maternity hospital, and they assess her. Amnio leaks are apparently normal and usually seal by themselves. We go home, wife takes it easy for a few days, but it doesn't seal. There's nothing that can be done surgically, and we have to induce. Our little girl fought to the end, but she was stillborn. Had she survived, the odds were in her favor, but we'll never know. The staff were so supportive. We okayed an autopsy for research purposes. Medically and genetically she was perfect. The only thing they could come up with was that her fingernail nicked the amniotic sac and the leakage was enough to prevent it sealing itself. Last year we expected a child with Down syndrome. Thank you science for giving us the opportunity of finding out she had chromosome issues and secondly have an abortion. I've been in this exact situation before. My wife was pregnant for the first time, and we did standard genetic testing at 13 weeks. The hospital accidentally ordered a full quad test, which ended taking longer, but they actually found genetic abnormalities that only the quad test looked for. Highly probable for Digi syndrome. It was like a punch to the gut. This was our first pregnancy, after trying for a year. We had just announced the pregnancy to our entire family. We decided to complete further genetic testing to confirm what the quad test found, and had amniocentesis completed. Christmas Eve the doctors confirmed our worst fears. We knew before trying that we would terminate the pregnancy if there were severe genetic issues, but we were at 20 weeks in the pregnancy, which is an issue in our home state. We ended up having to cross to another state for the termination. Being in that clinic and going through the process was one of the worst days of my life, and I can't fully imagine what it felt like for my wife, but we knew it was the best decision for us and our child. I hope nobody who actually wants a child is ever put in this situation.